What is going on, everybody? This video is all about stalemates. Try to find the move which draws the game in an otherwise lost position, or what appears to be. Take your time. Don't just skip through it. There's not a lot of material on YouTube which covers this, I guess, area of chess. And good luck. It is white to move. Give you 3 seconds to pause the video if you need more time. Remember, this whole video is about drawing the game. 1, 2, and 3. Out of white's 5 legal moves, only one draws the game, and that is E1. Because that forces the king to move, since the pawn no longer can. And out of the 6 moves black's king can go to, only one of them covers the pawn. Any other move would allow white's king to capture the pawn, and the only king move for black that covers the pawn still does not allow white any legal moves, which is also a stalemate. It is white to move. I'll give you 3 seconds to pause the video if you need. 1, 2, and 3. Well, it's not too bad of a one. I mean, the king can't move currently, and there's only one move for the pawn, so march it up, and that is a stalemate. White to move will give you 3 seconds if you need. 1, 2, 3. The proper move is straight back, because the only way black can promote the pawn is being next to it to protect it. And when it marches next to it, that allows you to get the opposition. The only way for them to make progress is to march the pawn, allowing you to get in front, and the only space that they can occupy, which still protects the pawn, leaves you in stalemate. The other option, if you take the wrong route and go to light square, that allows black to get the opposition. And when you go in front of the pawn, they march up, and your only square to move to now allows black to cover the promotion square. White to move, give you 3 seconds to pause the video if you need. 1, 2, 3. White's king is in check, and it has 2 options. The wrong move would be to hide behind the pawn, because then the king can just march forward, and then you only have one option. And then the black queen could check you, and after your only move, it would be checkmate. But if you march to the corner, the black queen, more or less, can just check you indefinitely, but there's nothing that they can do. If the queen never gave up a turn and let the king move, that's when you would be able to promote and exchange off, and it would still be a stalemate. It is white to move. I'll give you 3 seconds to pause the video. 1, 2, and 3. The wrong move would be promoting this pawn. Anything would just be captured with check, and the white king would be on the run, and the other pawn would fall shortly after. Running with the king doesn't do much. It'll lead to a checkmate. The only move that draws the game is pawn promoted to knight with check. The king will then get out of the way, and when you capture the black queen, black's king will capture the knight and capture the pawn shortly after. Stalemate. It is white to move. Give you 3 seconds to pause the video. 1, 2, and 3. Only one move prevents white from losing in 3 moves or less, and that is rook to c6 check. The black king has nowhere to run to, so it must capture the rook. The only piece that can capture the rook is the knight on d8, and by capturing the rook, that chokes out white's king and prevents it from being able to move. Stalemate. White to move. I'll give you 3 seconds to pause the video. 1, 2, and 3. White only has 2 legal moves. It can move the king, but if it does that, then the rook can go to d6, leaving white only 1 legal move again to go back to a8. Rook capture a6 would be checkmate. The other legal move is pawn march up, which is the stalemate, because black's king cannot move, and any piece that black moves other than the king does not open up more squares for the white king to move and would result in a stalemate. It is white to move. Take your time. Give you 3 seconds to pause the video. 1, 2, and 3. The only move that stalemates this game is queen to d3. The white king can't move, and this move forces the black king to capture the queen, since the only square that it should be able to escape to, it is unable to access because the white king is too close in proximity. So after the black king captures the white queen, it is stalemate. White to move. Give you 3 seconds to pause the video if you need. 1, 2, and 3. The proper move here now is bishop to c2 check. If the king moves out of the way, then the bishop would be able to capture the queen, and that is a stalemate position with 1 bishop each. If the queen captures the bishop, that leaves white with no move to make, stalemate. It is white to move. Give you 3 seconds to pause the video. 1, 2, and 3. The key here is not to restrict the king's movement, but for a 3-fold repetition. Queen to h5 check leaves black with only 1 move. That is g8. And now the queen goes to e8 check, leaving the king only 1 move, back to h7. None of black's pieces can interfere or stop the check. Queen to h5 check. King's forced to g8. Queen e8 check. And king to h7, 3-fold repetition, stalemate. White to move. I'll give you 3 seconds to pause the video. 1, 2, 3. The key here is a perpetual, with the first move being c7 check, kicking it off. The king then goes to b8, and you just follow up with the rook to b8, and then it can either go to a8, can't go to c8 because that would be checkmate. So after the king goes to a8, the key is just to follow up with the rook a7 check. And when the king goes to b8, a mistake would be, I mean, not really a mistake, but if you come in with the rook on b7, that more or less is just going to delay the 3-fold repetition more. So what you want to do is go ahead and check on b7 again, and the king is forced to go to a8, not c8, because then the c7 check with the rook on g file. And after the 3-fold repetition, stalemate. It is white to move and stalemate. I'll give you 3 seconds to pause the video. 1, 2, and 3. Proper sequence here is queen h6 check, leaving the king only 1 move since no other piece can interject. After king g8, you play queen g6, and the king must go back to the corner. Then you play queen h6, king must go back to g8, and you put queen g6, king's got to go to h8, and then you play queen h6 for the 3 repetition stalemate. That's a beaut right there. White to move. I'll give you 3 seconds to pause the video. 1, 2, and 3. The only move which saves white from losing is queen g8 check. Black has no pieces to capture the queen, so the king himself must capture the queen, leaving white with no legal moves. It is white to move. I'll give you 3 seconds to pause the video. 1, 2, 3. Promoting the pawn does nothing and would eventually lose because it comes with check as well. Knight to g7 checks the black king, forcing them to only move to go to f8. The knight could then jump to e6, checking the black king again, also covering the g7 escape square, forcing the king to go back to e8. A couple more repetitions. And that's a stalemate. It is white to move, and I'll give you 3 seconds to pause the video, because you're going to want to pause this one. 1, 2, and 3. The drawing move is f5, because you can't move the king, and if they take your pawn, then it's stalemate because you have no legal moves. And if they don't take the pawn, let's see what their options are. If they march the b pawn, you come through with check. And, I mean, if they take it, you're going to promote the e pawn. If they try marching the g pawn, same thing, check. And if they take, you promote. If they back up, then you take. And that's about that. Well, stalemate. White to move, and I will give you 3 seconds to pause. 1, 2, and 3. The only drawing move is queen f6 check. Black has nothing to block it with, so the king must now move to g8. Then you have the dirty little trick in your face, queen g7 check, forcing the king to take the queen. And then you have h6 check. Regardless of where the black king goes, white has no legal moves, stalemate. That's 3 consecutive moves in a row to achieve the stalemate. It is white to move. No, the board is not upside down. I'll give you 3 seconds. 1, 2, and 3. The magical moves in this situation is rook b5 check. The queen must take. Otherwise, black would lose with the material disadvantage. After the queen takes, you notice that that chokes out the king and traps him behind the a7 pawn. Since that a7 pawn is a square away from promotion, it's not going the other way. And then you can play f4 check. Regardless if the king takes the pawn or runs, stalemate. White has no legal moves. It is white to move. Give you 3 seconds to pause the video. You're probably going to need it on this one. 1, 2, and 3. Proper move that draws. Pawn promote queen. Black then plays pawn promote queen. From this position, I'll give you another 3 seconds to pause the video. 1, 2, and 3. The only drawing move, only, queen h1 check, forces the exchange. Stalemate. Hope you enjoyed. I'm going to take the opportunity to round this off at 15 minutes flat to ask you guys for a small favor. I don't get too much interaction with comments on my videos, even though I get a shit ton of views. If you like these series of the challenges, let me know your honest opinion. If they're garbage, if you like them, if you'd like to see a certain type in the future, and more or less, even criticism is okay. Any feedback is appreciated. And once again, I will see you on the next video. Thank you.